MTN has hailed a US Supreme Court ruling as a major boost to its defense against a $4.2 billion bribery lawsuit from rival Turkcell. MTN closed the day 0.5% down at over 161 Rand. Richard Hurst is senior analyst at Ovum. Welcome, Richard. So clearly limited response by the market to that. Now, this is sort of an interim decision because the lawsuit was brought in the US federal court. This is a US Supreme Court decision saying that there is no jurisdictional reach outside of the US on this court case, which I think is what everyone's been saying. Why did Turkcell take this court case to the US?
Precisely. It's a whole issue of jurisdiction, but I don't think it's the final word. But MTN will use this as a precedence going forward. And I think it's a very positive sign for MTN looking at its whole emerging market strategy.
And clearly it's never going to be easy to be fighting for territory in emerging markets, right? This is where the growth is. Everyone wants to be there. So possibly some players are going to play dirty or not, or who exactly it is who's playing dirty, I don't know. But you have to fight for the territory.
I'm sure you have to fight for the territory, but I think it's a matter of, if you'll excuse the expression, getting your hands dirty, but a matter of rolling up your sleeves and getting into those markets and committing to those markets. You don't have to go the underhanded route to get into those markets. But if you look at players like MTN, they've mastered those emerging markets, almost managing the risks.
I think just from my side, if we look at a company like MTN, and where it's positioned at the moment, it's obviously operating in a lot of high-risk markets from a political perspective and the growth areas that they've cited. Where it sits now at 160 odd Rand a share or 161 Rand a share, where do you see the growth for MTN going forward? Is there a lot of upside from what we're seeing? Are we going to be faced with a lot of political headwinds as it starts to venture further from the African sort of continent and go further? How do you see it playing out?
I think they'll pick their battles, but still within the emerging markets. They've cited, they're looking at the Vivendi stake in Morocco Telecom in Morocco. They're looking at the Myanmar Republic, which is the former Republic of Burma. That would be a greenfield opportunity for them. And the Morocco would be an existing operation. They don't have to enter into price wars, that type of thing. So I think they're going to pick their battles going forward.
Richard, can I ask you, in terms of Nigeria, the mobile termination rates, it was expected to be phased in over a period of time, and then a regulator said no, 40%. What effect do you think that's going to have on MTN?
That is on the wholesale level, and it doesn't affect so much the retail level, but it definitely knocks revenues. And there again, it depends on the reduction that they've done on the impact. But we've seen all the other operators mentioning in their annual reports.
But still MTN, from a dividend point of view, it's a very good payer, high yield.
It looks like a very promising and very sought after.
So if you were to choose a stock, an emerging market telecom stock, it would be high on your list?
I would definitely say yes.
Going back to the question Derek had, and perhaps you could all respond to this. So you're talking about the further growth potential for MTN as a whole, the blue sky potential. So there's still plenty of top line growth. What about margin performance in the various markets? Is it still new enough and emerging enough for those margin possibilities to be there?
I believe that there's a degree of maturity creeping into these emerging markets, which will bring pressure onto those margins. But it's still nowhere near the same pressure that the more developed economies, Europe and North America, are experiencing.
Going forward, I think it's all about data, as opposed to, I think, getting, and maybe through Africa, as people upgrade from a simple phone to a smartphone, and I think it's really more about data going forward as opposed to voice.
Yeah, I think, and that was the point I was going to raise. I mean, you really got to separate the business between data and obviously the telephone component that any telecom operator would give you. Data, in my opinion, people have underestimated drastically in terms of the high margin business that it actually is. If you're going into Africa and you're looking at that growth component, yes, hurdles, political hurdles, and a lot of headwinds that you face, the infrastructure is not 100% there, and for that, you're going into a risky market that's going to demand a nice fat margin when you are distributing that data. I agree, you're going to start to see the shift to a lot of smartphones being deployed, throughout Africa, and that data component is going to be very key to MTN's growth. So I like the stock. I think that the yield is a good fundamental underpin to it, but it comes with an element of risk.
But I think bear in mind, eventually, data is becoming cheaper around the world. Probably not in Africa yet, and certainly not it's become cheaper in South Africa if you see the specials that all the mobile operators are offering. But compared to a country like the United States, I think it's still pretty much, it's much more expensive. So I think there's still room for having those high margins, but I suppose eventually it will become a X growth, but I think they're still a long way from that.
We've got about a minute to go, but a completely different kettle of fish. Telkom has also been in the news, so they've now settled with the Competition Commission, paying the 449 million rand fine. Meanwhile, it's in the process of salary negotiations. Often this does not go well. One
almost feels with Telkom it's two steps forward, one step backward. They've reconstituted their board, they've appointed a CEO. There's a bit of clarity coming into their strategic direction.
Strong chairman,
and then they're trying to get all these issues with the competition behind them, and then of course they're hit with this whole labour dispute. And I think it's come at a very difficult time for them, and could knock other aspirations that they have.